To my daughter. No man would want her, but someone finally took the risk. My father said that, into a microphone. 70 guests. My engagement party. His smile so wide you'd think he was giving a blessing. The room went silent. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind where you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears. My fiancé's hand clenched beneath the tablecloth. I felt him start to rise. I pressed my palm against his arm. Steady. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I walked to the front of the room, opened my laptop, and projected one document onto the screen. My grandmother, sitting at the head table, pearls around her neck, hands folded in her lap, stared at the numbers. Then her water glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. That sound, glass breaking, that was the sound of my grandmother realizing what her own son had done to her. And that was the sound of my father's entire world beginning to fall apart. But this story doesn't start at the engagement party. It starts 3 months earlier. The afternoon I found numbers in my grandmother's accounts that didn't add up, and a truth I was never supposed to uncover. I'm Audrey Sinclair, 31 years old. I work as an elder financial protection specialist. That's a fancy way of saying I help families figure out when someone is stealing from grandma. Before we go any further, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly resonate with you. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now, and what time is it there? Share it in the comments. Now, let me take you back to the kind of childhood that looked perfect from the outside and felt like walking on eggshells from within. My father, Victor Sinclair, built Sinclair Property Development from nothing. One loan, one handshake, 18-hour days. By the time I was born, he had a corner office, a reputation in our town, and a way of walking into any room that made people stand straighter. I grew up watching people admire him. The charity dinners, the church fundraisers, the man who always picked the check and made sure everyone noticed. At home, things ran on different rules. My father never raised a hand. He didn't need to. He had a voice that could shrink you down to nothing without ever breaking conversational volume. And my mother, Diane, was always nearby, watching, sipping her coffee, saying nothing. That was the system. He cut, she watched, I bled quietly. But here's the thing people don't understand about childhoods like mine. It wasn't cruelty every day. That's what made it so confusing. Sometimes he was warm. Sometimes he laughed at my jokes. Sometimes he looked at me like I mattered, just enough to make me believe the next time would be different. It never was. By the time I was old enough to recognize the pattern, I had already built my entire sense of worth around earning his approval. And no matter what I achieved, honor roll, scholarships, career milestones, it was never quite enough. Because Victor Sinclair didn't hand out praise, he handed out conditions. I was 10 the first time I remember clearly. 4th grade, parent-teacher conference night. My teacher, Mrs. Langley, told my parents I was one of the brightest students she'd ever taught. I stood in the hallway, listening through the cracked door, heart pounding with hope. On the drive home, my mother said, "Isn't that wonderful, Victor? She's doing so well." My father didn't take his eyes off the road. Teachers say that to make parents feel good. Doesn't mean anything until she proves it in the real world. I sat in the back seat, staring at my hands. The glow from Mrs. Langley's words evaporated like morning fog. That was my first lesson. Accomplishments weren't mine to keep. They were his to evaluate. The pattern didn't change as I got older. It just got more sophisticated. High school graduation. I finished 3rd in my class. When I walked across that stage, my hands were trembling. I'd worked so hard. At dinner that night, my father spent 40 minutes telling the table about a land deal he'd just closed. 40 minutes. When someone finally asked about my speech, he waved his hand. "She did fine. Let's not make it bigger than it is." I smiled, nodded, cut my steak into smaller and smaller pieces so I'd have something to do with my hands. College was more of the same. I graduated with honors, double major in accounting and social work. I'd worked 2 jobs to keep my grades where they needed to be. My father came to the ceremony, wore his best suit, shook hands with everyone in sight. When the check came at dinner, loud enough for my roommates to hear, he said, "Let's hope that diploma opens more doors than it closes." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. That's what you do when Victor Sinclair makes a joke. You laugh. But here's what confused me for years, what kept me reaching for something that was never there. My grandmother, Eleanor, my father's mother, she was different. When I was 12, I won a county essay contest. Small thing. A local newspaper printed my name. My father said nothing about it. But my grandmother called me that night. I still remember her voice, soft and certain. "Audrey, I read your essay 3 times. I'm so proud of you. Not because you won, because every word sounded like you." I cried after I hung up. I didn't even know why. She never said those words in front of him, never made a show of it. No audience, no performance, just pride. Real pride, given freely. My grandmother was the only person in my family who ever made me feel like I was enough exactly as I was. I held on to that feeling for 20 years. I didn't know yet that my father had been stealing from her the entire time. I met Graham Porter at a conference in Baltimore. He was presenting on financial safeguards for aging populations. I was taking notes in the 4th row, half listening, mostly tired from a long week. But something about the way he spoke made me put my pen down. No flash, no performance, just calm, clear words that landed exactly where they were supposed to. After the session, he found me at the coffee station. "You were taking a lot of notes," he said. "Force of habit. Or genuine interest?" I looked at him. Brown eyes, steady gaze, no agenda behind the question. "Both," I said. We talked for an hour, then 2, missed the next session entirely. Graham was an attorney specializing in elder law. He'd spent the last decade helping families navigate the worst moments of their lives. Exploitation, capacity disputes, inheritance battles. He'd seen the ugliest sides of people, and somehow he still believed in doing the work. We exchanged numbers, then emails, then late-night phone calls that stretched past midnight. 6 months in, I brought him home to meet my parents. I should have known how it would go. My father opened the door with a handshake so firm it was a test. Within 10 minutes, the living room became an interrogation. Where did Graham go to school? What was his income bracket? Why elder law instead of corporate? Graham answered everything calmly. No defensiveness, no posturing. Then my father leaned back in his chair. "I hope you're patient, son. My daughter tends to need more hand-holding than most." The room went still. My mother studied her fingernails. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Graham spoke first. "With respect, sir, Audrey is the most competent person I know. I'm not here to hold her hand. I'm here because she's extraordinary." No heat, no aggression, just fact. My father stared at him for a long moment, then changed the subject to golf. But I saw it, the flicker behind his eyes, the micro shift in his jaw. Graham wasn't afraid of him, and that, I realize now, made him dangerous. Later, driving back to my apartment, Graham was quiet. Then he pulled the car to the side of the road and turned to face me. "Audrey, what your father said back there about you needing hand-holding, about being patient with you, like you're a burden someone has to tolerate." I waved my hand. "That's just how he talks. He doesn't mean it." "Audrey," his voice was gentle but firm, "that's not normal. You know that, right?" I didn't answer, but something cracked open that night, a tiny fracture in the wall I'd spent 30 years building. Have you ever had someone hold up a mirror and show you something about your life you weren't ready to see? Graham proposed on a Tuesday morning. No ring hidden in champagne, no skywriter, no flash mob. He made me breakfast, scrambled eggs, slightly burnt toast, coffee exactly how I like it, and sat across from me at our small kitchen table. "I want every morning to feel like this," he said. "Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the sentence. We wanted something small. 20 people, his parents' backyard, wine and laughter and people who actually knew us. My father had other ideas. He called 2 days after the proposal. I was still floating, still giddy, still believing this one thing could be mine. "I'm handling the engagement party, Audrey. Already booked the Wentworth." The Wentworth? A venue he used for his company's investor dinners, valet parking, crystal chandeliers, a projector screen built into the wall for presentations. "Dad, we don't need all that. Graham and I were thinking something casual." "Casual," he laughed, the kind of laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "My daughter's engagement and you want paper plates in someone's backyard? I'm paying for it. Let me do this." I looked at Graham. He was watching me, jaw tight, shaking his head slowly. Then my mother called. Her voice had that practiced softness, the one she used when she needed me to fold. "Just let him have this, Audrey. He's your father. He's trying to do something nice." So I folded, the way I always folded, the way she taught me to fold. Within a week, the guest list ballooned to 70. I scrolled through the names on my phone. His business partners, his golf foursome, his Rotary friends, couples whose last names I recognized from his company Christmas cards. My friends? 8 total. Table 7, near the kitchen. I called my father. "Dad, where are my people? Megan, Tasha, the group from work? They're at the back table." There wasn't room up front, Audrey. I had to prioritize. "Prioritize who? Your investors?" His voice sharpened. "This is a networking opportunity, not a slumber party. Don't be ungrateful." I hung up. My hands were shaking. Graham was watching from across the room. He hadn't said a word during the call, but his jaw was tight. "He invited 70 people," I said. 70, and I barely know half of them. Graham leaned against the counter. "You know why, right?" I looked at him. "He's performing," Graham said, "for his contacts, for his partners, the loving father, the proud dad. He's putting us on display like a showroom." I stared at the guest list on my phone. 70 names. And I was a prop at my own party. The night before the party, we lay in bed, lights off, both staring at the ceiling. "This is your party," Graham said quietly, "not his. You can still change the plan. If I fight him now, he'll make the next 6 months unbearable. You don't know him when he's angry." Graham was quiet for a long time. Then he rolled over to face me. "Okay, but I need you to hear something. I'm not marrying your father. I'm marrying you. And at some point, you're going to have to decide where the line is." He kissed my forehead and turned out the lamp. I lay there in the dark thinking about my mother. 32 years of marriage. 32 years of folded napkins and practiced silence. If I didn't draw the line now, I would become her. I couldn't sleep after that. 3 months before the engagement party. A Saturday in early September. The kind of afternoon where the light turns golden and the air starts hinting at autumn. I drove to my grandmother's house to help her organize paperwork. She'd been meaning to do it for months. Old bank statements, insurance documents, a filing cabinet that hadn't been touched since my grandfather died. Eleanor was 81, sharp as ever, but tired in ways she tried to hide. Her hands shook slightly when she poured the tea. Her reading glasses sat crooked on her nose. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart," she said. "I know you're busy." "Never too busy for you, Grandma." We sat at her kitchen table, sorting through decades of paper. Marriage certificates, property deeds, my grandfather's military records. Then we got to the bank statements. Eleanor waved her hand. Those are fine. Victor handles all of that for me, has for years. Something prickled at the back of my neck. Professional instinct. The same instinct that had helped me uncover exploitation in dozens of cases. Mind if I take a look anyway, just to make sure everything's in order? She shrugged. If you want. I trust your father completely. I opened the first envelope. The numbers didn't make sense. Her retirement account, the one my grandfather had built over 40 years of work, showed a balance far lower than it should have been. I opened another statement, then another. Withdrawals. Regular withdrawals. Monthly, sometimes twice a month. Small enough to avoid automatic flags, large enough to add up. I felt my chest tighten. Grandma, do you make regular withdrawals from this account? She looked confused. No, dear, I barely touch it. Victor set up automatic transfers for my bills. He handles everything else. I pulled out my phone, opened the calculator, started adding. 8 years of statements, 8 years of withdrawals. The total made my stomach drop. Audrey? What's wrong? You look pale. I couldn't answer. My hands were trembling. I asked to borrow the statements, told her I wanted to double-check some things. She agreed without hesitation, trusting me the way she'd always trusted me, the way she trusted him. That night, I sat at my kitchen table until 3 a.m., cross-referencing every withdrawal against Eleanor's known expenses. The numbers didn't lie. Nearly $500,000 gone, and every single signature belonged to the man who raised me. For 2 weeks, I didn't sleep. I worked my regular job during the day. At night, I built a case against my own father. I requested additional records from Eleanor's bank, told them I was helping her organize her estate. Technically true. They sent everything. I traced every withdrawal, documented every discrepancy, built the kind of report I'd built for clients 100 times before. Except this time, the subject was Victor Sinclair. The evidence was undeniable. 8 years of systematic theft from his own mother. A woman who trusted him completely. A woman who still lit up when he walked into a room. He'd taken her retirement, her security, her peace of mind. And she had no idea. I told Graham on a Wednesday night, sat him down at the kitchen table, slid the folder across to him. He read it slowly, the way lawyers read everything, once for content, once for implications. When he finished, he looked up. How much? Close to $500,000 over 8 years. He set the papers down. His face was unreadable. What do you want to do? I don't know, my voice cracked. He's my father. Graham nodded. He didn't push, didn't lecture, didn't say what any reasonable person would have said, that my father was a thief and deserved to be exposed. Instead, he leaned forward. He's also stealing from a woman who trusts him, your grandmother, the only person in that family who ever made you feel safe. I looked at the table, the grain in the wood, the ring stain from my coffee mug. Whatever you decide, Graham said, I'm with you, but don't sit on this too long. Eleanor deserves to know. I agreed. My plan was clear. Wait until after the engagement party. Keep the peace for one more event. Then, Monday morning, I would sit down with my grandmother privately, show her the evidence, help her understand. Clean, professional. No drama. No scene. I brought my laptop to the party. Graham's suggestion. I had a work deadline Monday anyway. I could send files during the cocktail hour. A practical decision. Nothing more. If you're still with me, you already sense what I couldn't admit to myself. Some truths refuse to wait for convenient timing. That's why I share these stories. Staying close to the truth is the only protection we have. What I didn't know yet was that my father had been writing his toast all week, and what he planned to say would change my timeline entirely. Saturday evening, the Wentworth. Crystal chandeliers, white orchid centerpieces, a string quartet playing something soft and classical that I couldn't name. My father had outdone himself. That was the thing about Victor Sinclair. When he performed flawlessly. Graham and I arrived together. I wore a champagne silk dress I'd bought specifically for tonight. Graham was in a charcoal suit, his hand steady on the small of my back as we walked through the double doors. My father met us in the foyer, already working the room, champagne in hand, handshake ready. "There she is." He opened his arms wide. "There's my beautiful girl." He hugged me, held it for 3 full seconds. His cologne was sharp and expensive. My body went rigid. My father never called me beautiful, not at prom, not at graduation, not once in 31 years. But here, in front of the arriving guests, in front of his business partners and golf buddies, I was suddenly his beautiful girl. I hugged him back, because what else do you do? My grandmother arrived shortly after, Eleanor, in her pearls and her navy dress, her hair freshly set. She looked elegant, fragile, trusting. She took my hands in hers. "You look radiant, sweetheart." "Thank you, Grandma." I couldn't meet her eyes, not fully, because my laptop was under the AV table near the projector screen, and inside it was a file that would shatter her world. Not tonight, I told myself. Monday, privately, with dignity. Dinner was served at 7:15. My father had arranged the seating, so he was at the head of our table, table 1, with Eleanor to his right, my mother to his left, and Graham and me across from them. The food was excellent, the wine was expensive, and my father was in rare form. Somewhere between the salad chorus and the main, he started telling stories. Not about Graham and me, about me. The greatest hits of Audrey's failures repackaged as comedy. "Did I ever tell you about the time Audrey tried to bake a cake for my birthday? Nearly set the kitchen on fire." He held up his hands. "I'm not exaggerating. Actual flames." Laughter rippled across the table. "And her first car? She backed it into the mailbox. Twice. Same mailbox." More laughter. My mother laughed, my grandmother smiled politely. People who didn't know me laughed because Victor Sinclair had that gift, making cruelty sound like warmth. I smiled, the autopilot smile, the one I'd been practicing since I was 10. Graham didn't smile. His hand found mine under the tablecloth and held it. Across the table, Eleanor tilted her head slightly. She leaned toward my mother and said, softly but not softly enough, "Victor's being a bit hard on her tonight, isn't he?" My mother's answer came instantly, reflexively, the trained response. "Oh, that's just how he shows love." Eleanor looked at me. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't say anything else, but I could see it. The quiet discomfort of a woman who loves her granddaughter and doesn't understand why her son speaks this way. She told me later, "I knew something was wrong that night. I just didn't know I was part of it." 8:15. Dessert plates cleared. The string quartet paused. My father stood up. He buttoned his jacket, picked up a spoon, tapped it against his champagne glass 3 times. The room quieted, the way people quiet for a man they've learned to listen to. "I want to raise a glass to my daughter, Audrey." I straightened in my chair. My heart did something stupid. It hoped. Even after everything, after 31 years of evidence, some broken part of me still leaned toward the light. Maybe this time. "For 31 years, my father said, scanning the room with that showman's gaze, "I've watched this girl try." The word landed like a stone in still water. Try to keep up. Try to measure up. Try to find her place in the world. My face went hot. I could feel 70 pairs of eyes shifting toward me. "I'll be honest," he paused for effect. "There were times I wasn't sure anyone would stick around long enough to figure her out." A few uncomfortable laughs, glasses held mid-air. Then he raised his champagne flute, smiled his biggest smile, and delivered the line he'd been writing all week. So tonight, I want to toast my daughter. No man would want her, but someone finally took the risk." He laughed, a big, generous Victor Sinclair laugh. No one joined him. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. 70 people frozen, forks down, eyes wide. A woman at table 5 covered her mouth with her hand. My grandmother stared at her son, confusion and hurt flickering across her face. Graham's whole body tensed beside me. I felt his weight shift. His chair started to move. I put my hand on his arm. Firm, steady. "Don't," I whispered. "I've got this." The silence held. A few people at the far tables raised their glasses out of sheer discomfort, muscle memory overriding judgment. Most didn't. My father stood there, glass still raised, reading the room. He was smart enough to feel the temperature drop, but Victor Sinclair had never backed down from a room in his life. "Oh, come on," he said, grinning wider. "It's a joke. Audrey knows I love her." He turned to me, eyes bright with that manufactured warmth. "Right, sweetheart?" 70 people looked at me. I looked at my father. 5 seconds passed. 5 seconds is a long time when no one is breathing. Then I pushed my chair back, stood up, smoothed the front of my dress, and I walked, calm, steady, no rush, to the front of the room. My laptop was under the AV table. I'd stashed it there during setup, planning to send my Monday work file at cocktail hour. I hadn't needed it then. I needed it now. I unzipped the bag, opened the laptop. My hands were steady. My heart was not. My father's voice came from behind me, sharp. "Audrey, what are you doing?" I didn't turn around. I plugged the HDMI cable into the projector port, the same projector my father had set up for his curated family slideshow, photos of vacations he'd chosen, holidays he'd staged, a highlight reel of a family that didn't exist. The screen lit up. I opened the folder, Financial Documentation, Eleanor Sinclair. Then I turned to face the room. My father just told 70 people that no man would want me. I think it's only fair that these same 70 people know who my father really is. I clicked the file open. The first page filled the screen. White background, black text, a header that read, "Summary of unauthorized withdrawals, Eleanor Sinclair retirement accounts." My grandmother's water glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the hardwood floor. That sound. That was the sound of everything breaking at once. "This documentation shows a pattern of unauthorized withdrawals from my grandmother's retirement accounts," I said. "Over 8 years. Nearly $500,000. Every signature belongs to one person." I looked at my father. "Victor Sinclair." The room didn't gasp. It was worse than that. It absorbed. 70 people processing at once, widened eyes, hands reaching for phones, couples leaning into each other to whisper. My grandmother sat frozen at table 1. Her face had gone pale, her hands trembled in her lap. "Eleanor," I said, my voice softening, "I'm so sorry. I was going to tell you privately, after tonight. I never wanted you to find out this way." She didn't respond. She just stared at the screen, at the numbers, at the signatures she'd trusted for a decade. My father moved fast. He always did when the walls closed in. He stepped toward me, both palms up, the peacemaker's pose. "This is ridiculous." His voice was loud now. Loud in a way it never was in public. The indoor voice cracking open to show what lived underneath. "She's lying. She's angry. I made a joke she didn't like, and now she's making things up to humiliate me." I turned and looked at him directly. For the first time in 31 years, I looked at my father without flinching. "Dad, this is literally what I do for a living. I investigate elder financial exploitation. I've reviewed hundreds of cases. I know exactly what theft looks like." I pointed at the screen. "And this is theft." My father's face twisted. Something ugly surfaced behind his eyes. "You ungrateful little—" "Victor!" My grandmother's voice. Quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. She stood up slowly, steadied herself on the edge of the table. "Is it true?" My father turned to her. His expression shifted, the performer scrambling for his mask. "Mother, she's confused. She doesn't understand the arrangements we made. I was managing your money, protecting it." "Is it true?" Louder this time. Firmer. My father's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Eleanor looked at me, then at the screen, then back at her son. "I trusted you," she said. "You're my son. I trusted you with everything." "Mother, please." "Don't." She raised one hand, the same gesture he used when he wanted to silence a room. "Don't you dare mother me right now." The room watched in stunned silence. My mother sat at table 1, hands folded, eyes fixed on her plate. The same silence she'd given me for 31 years. Now she gave it to him. Graham stepped up beside me. He didn't say a word, just placed his hand gently on my back. Then, Eleanor did something I never expected. She walked to me, slowly, carefully, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She took my face in both her hands, her fingers trembling, her eyes wet, and she said, "Thank you for telling me the truth, sweetheart, even when it hurt." I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. She kissed my forehead. Then she turned, walked past her son without a glance, and left through the double doors. One by one, tables began to empty. Coats collected, cars started in the parking lot. Not a single person stopped to shake my father's hand on the way out. By 9 o'clock, the room was nearly empty, and my father stood alone in the center of it, the projector still glowing behind him, casting the evidence across his back like a shadow he couldn't shake. Monday came fast. Eleanor's attorney, a woman named Patricia Vance, was in my grandmother's living room by 9 a.m. with a legal pad and a box of tissues. My report was the catalyst, but the process had to be clean, independent, by the book. I understood that. I wanted that. By Tuesday, word had traveled the way it always does in small communities, through phone calls that start with, "Did you hear?" and end with, "I always thought something was off." Victor Sinclair was removed from the board of the Ridgewood Community Foundation. Not suspended, removed. 15 years of charity galas and ribbon cuttings erased in a single vote. By Wednesday, 3 of the business partners who'd sat at his carefully arranged tables on Saturday night had quietly severed ties. No public statements, just unreturned phone calls, canceled lunches, the slow, deliberate erasure that happens when people decide you're no longer worth the association. The independent audit took 4 weeks. When the final report came in, it confirmed everything in my file, and then some. $463,000. That was the total. Siphoned over 8 years through forged signatures and manipulated statements. Money that was supposed to fund my grandmother's final years, her security, her dignity. Gone. Eleanor filed a civil lawsuit in January. Breach of fiduciary duty, elder financial exploitation, theft by deception. Her attorney told Graham, off the record, attorney to attorney, that a criminal referral to the district attorney's office was under consideration. My father hired a defense lawyer, a good one, but good lawyers cost money, and my father's assets were frozen pending the outcome of the civil case. By March, Sinclair Property Development was under review. Contracts suspended, investors pulling out. The company he'd built from nothing was crumbling from within. Then the house went up for sale. The big colonial with the circular driveway. The one where he'd hosted 4th of July barbecues and Christmas parties. The one where he'd held court in the living room, making everyone feel small. I saw the listing online, looked at it for 10 seconds, then closed the tab. My father called me 7 times that first week. I didn't pick up. Not once. The 8th call went to voicemail. I listened to it once. Audrey, you need to fix this. Call me back. Now. Still giving orders. Even now. I deleted the voicemail and set my phone on the counter, screen down. The man who controlled every room he walked into couldn't get his own daughter to answer the phone. And for the first time in my life, that silence was mine to give, not his to take. My grandmother moved in with her sister in February. She called me every Sunday. Sometimes we talked about the case. Mostly we didn't. She told me once, her voice soft and tired, I keep thinking about all those years, all those times I defended him, made excuses for how he spoke to you. Grandma, you didn't know. But I should have seen it, Audrey. A mother should see who her son really is. I didn't have an answer for that. Some wounds don't close with words. They just need time and presence and the slow, deliberate erasure that happens when people decide you're no longer worth the association. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon in March. I almost didn't answer. Audrey. Her voice was different, smaller, but somehow clearer. Hi, Mom. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. I should have said something 30 years ago. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes, leaned against the kitchen counter. I saw what he did to you, she continued, every time. And I told myself it was his way of caring. That's what I told myself, Audrey, because the alternative, admitting I'd let my daughter be hurt by her own father, was too much. Mom, let me finish, please. Her voice cracked. What you did at that party, standing up like that, I've never been that brave, not once in my life. And watching you, it broke something open in me. I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. What I said was, I love you, Mom, but love isn't enough. Not anymore. I need you to show me. She was quiet. Then, I started seeing someone, a therapist. Last week was my first session. I pressed my hand to my mouth. My eyes burned. That's a good start, Mom. 6 months after the party, Graham and I hosted our own celebration. Not at the Wentworth, not at any venue, in Graham's parents' backyard. 18 people, string lights from the hardware store, burgers on the grill, a Bluetooth speaker playing a playlist we'd made together on a lazy Sunday morning. No projector, no slideshow, no seating chart. My friends sat on lawn chairs and drank wine from plastic cups. Graham's mother brought her famous apple pie. His father gave a toast that was 4 sentences long and made everyone laugh. Real laughter, the kind that comes from the belly. My grandmother came. She arrived early, carrying flowers she'd picked from her sister's garden. She was quieter than before, careful with her words. But she was there, present, healing. My father was not invited. Halfway through the evening, I stepped away from the group, stood at the edge of the yard, looking up at the stars. Graham found me there. You okay? Yeah, I leaned into him. I spent 31 years trying to earn one word from my father, and here's your mom calling me sweetheart like it's nothing. Here's my grandmother trusting me again after everything. Graham put his arm around me. Some people build, he said quietly. Some people take. You can't change which one your father chose to be. I pressed my face into his shoulder, and I cried. Not because I was sad, exactly, but because something that was locked tight for 31 years had finally opened, and everything inside needed somewhere to go. People ask me if I regret it. The answer is complicated. I regret that my father put me in a position where I had to choose between loyalty and honesty. That choice should never have been mine to make. But I don't regret the truth. I don't regret standing up. I didn't walk to that projector to get revenge. I didn't have a plan. My plan was Monday morning, clean, professional, private. But when my father stood in front of everyone I loved and called me worthless, something shifted. Not anger, something deeper. The realization that if I swallowed this, I would swallow everything forever. I was tired of swallowing. Silence isn't loyalty. Silence is complicity. I learned that watching my mother fold napkins and smile for 32 years. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, if you know what it's like to sit at a table and shrink yourself so someone else can feel big, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I will tell you this. Setting a boundary with your family doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you love yourself enough to say, I won't accept this anymore. And sometimes, that's the bravest sentence a person can speak. Here's where I am now. Graham and I are getting married next month. Small ceremony, 30 guests, every single one of them chosen by us. My grandmother will be there, front row. She's already picked out her dress. My mother is still in therapy. We talk every week now. It's careful, like learning to walk again after a long time sitting still. She's not the mother I needed when I was 10, but she's trying to be the mother I need now. My father hasn't contacted me since the voicemail. I don't expect him to. The man who spent 31 years controlling every conversation finally ran into one he couldn't manage. I'm not a hero. I want you to understand that. I'm not some warrior who planned the perfect takedown. I'm a woman who got pushed too far on the wrong night and happened to have the evidence to push back. That's the whole story. Some days I wake up and miss my father. Not the real one, the one I invented, the version who would have said he was proud of me without needing an audience. That father never existed. But the grief is real. If you know what it's like to mourn someone who's still alive, I see you. And I hope you know you're allowed to grieve and move forward at the same time. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who finally told the truth. And the truth, it turns out, was enough. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone's image and finally telling the truth? I'd love to hear your story in the comments.